Myrna?
Yeah.
All right, welcome to our event today. This is one of our Autistic Sex series conversations this month in our Sizzling Sexy Summer series for Mind Your Autistic Brain. And today I am joined by the fantastic, the fabulous, one of my favorite humans in the whole wide world, Miss Mona Kay. She is the host and founder of Neurodiverse Love. And we are talking all about sex and our neurodiverse relationships today. Welcome to the show, Mona.
Thank you, Carole Jean. I'm looking forward to this great discussion.
Oh my goodness, me too. So give me a sec here. I just clicked on something that's got my phone going here. So I'm trying to make sure that everything's working and everything's streaming to our live here on YouTube where everybody can connect and share their insights.
Awesome.
Oh, yay, we are there. We are there. Guys, say hello in the chat box, please. We want to know where you're joining us from. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comment chat box. It is open while we are here live. It will not be available for the replay, so don't worry about anything like that. We're making sure that, nobody's stuff showing up anywhere, I promise. So just if you do have a question, drop it in the comments section there. And at the end, when we do our question and answer, I'll go back and sort of check and pull all of those up for you. So Mona, we are talking all about sex and our neurodiverse relationships. So I think a good place to start is, what are some of the common or most discussed challenges that you have found in neurodiverse relationships?
Oh, what a great question. So let me share with the audience a little bit about who I am. And I want to let everybody know that I was married for 30 years. We didn't find out that we were a neurodiverse couple until our 29th year of marriage. And I've been divorced for a little over 4 years. So I identify as either non-autistic or neurotypical. And what I've been doing for the last 2 years is I have these wonderful online support groups. And they're mostly for the non-autistic and neurotypical partners. And so what I'm going to be sharing today, as Carole Jean knows, is what I'm learning and what I've learned from my past experiences with autistic men, so that it might help some of the folks that are listening today. So first of all, I want to start with something positive, Carole Jean, because I think this is really important to kind of lay the foundation for our discussion. Every single person out there deserves to have a healthy, satisfying sex life. Period. Stop. And Carole Jean, I know you're shaking your head. Yes, you agree. Number one, right?
So important.
And first of all, I think we have to believe that we deserve that, and it is our right to have that. And then I think the next thing that we need to ask ourselves is, do we know what we enjoy? What we enjoy individually, that has to do with sex and physical intimacy. And if we have had experiences with other people, what do we enjoy when we're with them? I think both are critically important. And then I think the next thing that is important for us to think about is, how can we communicate to our partners what we want, what we need, what feels good, and what doesn't feel good? Shaking your head.
Oh, I'm over here going, yes, yes, yes. And Marta, that's one of the things too, that as a late identified autistic ADHD woman, that I did not recognize. Number one, I didn't give myself permission to just enjoy. And number two, I didn't understand and recognize and know that I was alexithymic until 2 years ago. So identifying what those sensory pleasures were for me, and then how to communicate those, or that I had the power and the authority and the agency in my own life to communicate my needs to my partner. I just showed up sort of like, okay, hey, it's all just going to happen and somehow it'll work out. And that's just not how it works for anybody, no matter the neurotype.
Exactly. And I have to say, I was very fortunate in my marriage because I think sex was one of my partner's special interests. It was something that he had researched his entire life, and I got the benefit of that. So I'm very thankful about that. And I think that if we're going to have a healthy sex life, we need to do our own research. We need to find out about the parts of our body that are working or not working for us. We need to understand what our bodies as women or men, or whatever our identity is, what works for us. And I think one of the things that I hear most often that makes me the most sad is that a couple who loves each other dearly and is still attracted to each other are challenged sexually. And I think sometimes, especially in neurodiverse relationships, that happens because there's other things happening in their life that they may not have the tools to deal with. So I'd like to start there and then kind of lead to what can make a healthy and satisfying sex life.
I love that. I think
okay.
That's a beautiful place to start.
Okay.
And for those of you who are neurodivergent women, we have a special workshop this Saturday hosted by sex educator, autistic author, and it is a 90-minute workshop. We have it at 3:00 this coming Saturday. And that's also Autistic Pride Day, guys. So we're going to be celebrating in our very neurodistinct way about sensual pleasure and intimate touch for ourselves. And guys, just a little insight. This isn't going to be like racy hands-on kind of stuff, but it will be exploring your sensory touch in other ways that translates to the bedroom that you can do in your own time. So with that being said, Mona, let's dive into this. Let's start with the foundation of, once we've established that, yes, we can have pleasure, we can allow ourselves to enjoy this, that there are things that make it different in a neurodivergent relationship and a neurodiverse relationship. And how do we start? How do we start this conversation? Because, for a lot of us, if we've been married for a while, and maybe this wasn't something we knew, and we've just learned, hey, one or both of us have a unique neurotype from what we thought we had our whole lives. And now we're looking at our relationship and our marriage in a new way. Where do we kind of start this conversation?
I think it's, like I said earlier, I think it's really important to know what you enjoy. So if you like to have a scent, if you like to have a cologne or a perfume, or you don't like them, I think that that's really important, because I think knowing the sensory issues that can tip you off and make you uncomfortable is going to be really important. Some people wear a particular soap, perfume, cologne, whatever, deodorant. I think those are really important, because I think when we have sensory issues that we don't understand, we can get turned off so easily. And then our partner takes it personal. They may feel hurt or rejected. And the fact of the matter is, we're not aware that we're having maybe a sensory issue that is making us uncomfortable in having some kind of physical or sexual intimacy. So being aware of any sensory issues is really, really important. I think the other thing is to know what kind of touch you like. Do you prefer soft touch? Do you prefer hard, like almost a vibrating touch? Do you prefer being close and cuddling? Do you prefer being under a blanket, being under a sheet? Do you prefer being fully naked? Do you prefer sharing, only parts of yourself? If you're a woman, would you prefer to wear a bra? What are the things that make you feel most comfortable when you're being physically intimate with a partner? And those are things I don't think we ask ourselves. And I think we get into relationships with people, especially as women, and we may feel very vulnerable. And we do whatever we think is normal because it's something we've seen on TV or we've read in a romance novel. And we wonder why we're really anxious when we're going into a new relationship, or we know we're going to get physical with somebody. So I think those are really important things to think about and get clear about what it is you like. Okay. And then the other thing I think is there are boundaries that we may not even know we have. And we have to be able to feel comfortable sharing those with our partner. So some of our partners may be into BDSM. They may want to tie you up or be tied up. Those are things that you may want to explore, but you may need more information about. It's an opportunity for you to ask questions. I feel like it's really, really important to not say yes to something that doesn't feel safe or good for you when your partner either asks or approaches you and wants to do something that they are interested in. I remember having, when I started dating after my divorce, I remember having one man ask me if I liked spanking. And I told him, no, I didn't. And he said to me, would you be interested in spanking me? And I said, no, I'm not okay with that. And that was the last time we saw each other. I had to be clear about what my boundaries were and what I was interested in and the places where I would go, and be honest about that so that the potential partner would feel comfortable having that kind of relationship with me. Does that make sense?
Oh, it absolutely does, Mona. And I love this because you and I kind of met last week and put together a group of thoughts and ideas and some questions. And I love this one that you have in here that you added for us. And I think this is so important. And it's to start with, what is your vision for a satisfying, enjoyable physical and sexual relationship? And I think sometimes we, as late identified individuals, sometimes have never asked ourselves that questions. I know that was true for myself. I know it's true for so many of my coaching clients. And it's, we don't ask ourselves, well, what are our expectations and what do we need in
Yes.
that?
Yes. And I think that takes time, depending on your age, depending on how many relationships you've had, depending on how open your partner has been to discussing that with you. And I think we live in such a wonderful time that you can go on the internet and you can search for anything. So right. So if you're interested in exploring a particular position or a particular way of having sex or a particular type of relationship, you can find that. And you can learn on your own how wonderful that is and how wonderful it would be if you could share that with your partner. And I would highly recommend not sharing it when you're in bed in the middle of the beginning of sex, having that conversation outside of the bedroom and starting out with one thing that you realize turns you on or makes you excited, and sharing that with your partner kind of in a non-threatening way. And just like the guy who asked me if I was into spanking, I mean, he was very, very kind and respectful about it. And I answered honestly. I think if you're going to share that intimacy with another person, it's really important to be honest with yourself and honest with them. And the other thing, Carole Jean, is sometimes we don't know what we truly like until we try it, because it may be something that is anxiety producing when we see it or we read about it, but we're curious. And it's really important to have a partner that you feel safe saying, I'm not sure I'm going to like this, but I'd like to try it. Can we go slowly? And can you share with me what you're doing step by step, in whatever way works for you? And then I want you to know if I don't feel comfortable, I'm going to say that to you and I need you to stop.
Yeah. And you know
That
what? A big
is
part of that
important.
too. Oh, Mona, that is so important. And you bring up a lot of things, and I've got like they're running through my brain, right? My hamsters are on fire up here. So you always do this to me. You always get my brain firing. I love it. So in that, there's a couple of things. Number one, it's that you've created a zone of safety to have these conversations, that you feel safe being vulnerable and sharing these very intimate thoughts, desires, and wishes, or just even the experimentation of it. And the other thing is, so often, I think it's one of the things that happens to us when we don't realize it until we stop and sort of check in. And it's that we onboard all of these beliefs and ideas that we should be doing this, and this is how it's supposed to be done, or this is the expectation. And one of the things that I think sometimes throws a monkey wrench in our perception of what those things are is porn.
Yes.
And porn really, and I was having a conversation yesterday with someone, and it was just really such a great one. And I said, I think I've come to the place where, pornography, the best way for me to describe it is it's fantasy. It's not reality. And so often, the very black and white literal thinkers of us look at that and go, oh, that's how it's supposed to be, or that's how my body's supposed to look during sex. And so you're like holding your breath and all the things during sex so that nothing moves and stays in the right place because you've seen this, and this is how other women or other men look, or other people look. And so you think that's how I'm supposed to look, and then you don't relax and enjoy the moment, and you're not in the present of the experience because you're so worried about holding it all in and making sure it's in the right place. And as you get over 40, folks, gravity takes hold. It's where it's supposed to be anymore.
Yeah.
And when you have that space where you've established some safety in that, being able to be vulnerable and say, hey, I was thinking about this. This is sort of a fantasy that I have. And there's a difference there sometimes too, because it's like sometimes we have a fantasy and it's just that it's going to remain a fantasy. We like to talk about it. It's fun to sort of say what we would want to do in the moment while we're engaging in intercourse with our partner in sexual acts. But it's not something we would ever want to do in reality. But the thought discussion of the fantasy is really a turn on.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes we don't recognize that's okay. That does, just because we think or feel or we're turned on by something we talk about doesn't mean it actually has to translate into happening in real life.
Mm-hmm. I so agree. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I so agree. And I think porn, because it's, so readily available, can be a plus and a challenge. Okay. So I think the plus is exactly what you're talking about. The strength is that you can learn about things that might be interesting or might be a turn on that you want to either talk about or you actually want to follow through and do with your partner. Number one. I also think that it takes you to places that you would never have been just watching TV, right? Yeah. So I used to read a lot of romance novels because I'm really into romance. I like the whole romance thing. And that's really important to me during sex. I like to talk. I like to be able to look into my partner's eyes. I like to be able to kiss a lot. And those are things that are important to me. And not every person that I've been with is comfortable with those things. And sometimes I would take it personal. And sometimes I would ask, could you do this for 3 seconds? Could you look at me for 3 seconds? Maybe not the entire time we're having sex. Would that be okay? And I think as long as we're comfortable asking for a little bit and giving our partners the opportunity to say, no, I really can't even do that for 3 seconds because it's too much sensory overload for me. But believe me, I am totally immersed in what we're doing and loving every minute of it. Great, fantastic. But if they can't even feel comfortable responding, that's going to create some challenges, in the relationship. So the positive of porn is that it can give us a lot of ideas. It can definitely turn us on, especially if we're watching it together, which I've done with partners. And I love that excitement. Not that we're going to do everything we see, but we're going to engage in some fun things afterwards. And we're both really turned on. The other thing, Carole Jean, and I think we've talked about this before, is that I'm seeing this in a lot of the relationships of the folks that are coming to the support groups that I offer, is porn replacing sex with a partner, or masturbation replacing sex with a partner. And I don't know how many people will be tuning into this that are neurotypical or non-autistic, but I think sometimes porn is used to reduce anxiety, to help with dealing with the stressors in life. And when it becomes the only thing that's bringing sexual satisfaction, when your partner is there in the home, they're, ready and willing, I think it creates challenges. And that's probably an opportunity to seek, professional help. Because the reason a person might be turning to porn is not because they don't love you and not because they're not attracted to you, but because they're trying to deal with their own issues. And this is one of the ways that helps them. Yeah.
There's just so much to unpack there. So I'm going to pop over to the chat for a second, because we've had a couple of really great comments and I love these. And so you may not always have the same need or desire all the time. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. I mean, we all have these seasons of different levels. And, let's talk about it like this way. I talk about energy a lot, because that's part of, balancing who we are, so we don't live on that chronic cycle burnout loop. And part of that is our sexual energy. Throughout our seasons in life, that's going to change. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, it's a gradual change, so we don't always recognize that it's happening. Maybe our partner is in another place. And so then we reach this place where we have sort of a sexual energy mismatch, where one partner may be wanting sex pretty regularly and the other person's perfectly happy to just read a book that night. Right. They just don't have that drive. So how do we kind of navigate those different seasons of sexual energy, Mona?
Yeah, I had that happen in my marriage over and over again. And I think one of the most important things is to be able to talk about it. Because if you can't talk about it, it is only going to get worse. And I absolutely did it the wrong way, with screaming and getting emotional, not appropriate. The way in, I accept where I screwed up. The more appropriate way, if you want your partner to hear what your needs are, is to say something really positive about your partner and say, I love it when you hug me. I love it when we hold hands. I love it when we sit on the couch and snuggle. And I'd love to do that more often. Can you help me understand how we can get there? What is it that you need from me? And take the responsibility. If you're the one who wants to have sex more, be intimate more, take the responsibility to hear what your partner needs. Also, if your partner's really stressed at work, or if you just had a baby, or your child's going through some issues, or you had a second or a third child, there are going to be daily stressors that are going to exhaust the heck out of you. And you just don't want to be touched. You don't have time in your day to even think about physical intimacy. But the more you let that go, the harder it is, I think, to come back to it. So maybe you're not going to have sex for a few months because you just don't have the energy or the bandwidth, But what else can you do to be close to your partner? How can you physically engage with your partner in a way that's loving and kind? And how can you explain to them what you need without putting them on the defensive and without making them feel that they're wrong? Because I think the second we do that, guilty, the second we do that, we put our partner on the defensive, we create a really unsafe environment for them to share what they're going through. Does that make sense?
Oh, it really does. It so does, Mona. And one of the things that I found in my relationship is that having that zone of safety, that foundation that I'm not being judged by myself first. It has to start with us.
Yeah.
I'm not judging myself for whatever turns me on or I like or I need, because so often I think we kind of, from a societal norm perspective, and we've got a comment in the chat really about this. I think it's so powerful.
Awesome.
That sometimes figuring out what you like can be hard to figure out,
Absolutely.
to actually genuinely what you enjoy and what you want, because you've masked for decades and you have these things that you think you should yourself to death, as Tracy says. You get to that place. And I think sort of for me, how I navigated that in the last 9 years has been, I had to get really brave, vulnerable, and courageous with myself. I had to stop judging myself first, because if I look back, I was masking for survival, but I was also, over time, it began to become a place of such internalized judgment and shame of not doing it right, not being good enough, not living up to the quote unquote expectations I had ascribed or agreed to. And really, it's not an easy place to be. And this was not an easy feat at all. But just to give myself permission to just go, you know what? I'm not going to judge this. I'm not assigning good. I'm not assigning bad. It's just data. When I put on my lab coat and I said, I'm going to be the best scientist and experimenter in my own life, in all aspects of life, that took off and helped remove a lot of that masking and that superficial barrier that I had put up to protect myself. And the next step in that for me was, once I allowed myself that latitude to just see and explore, to learn who I am, because I didn't really have that opportunity in my life, but to also extend that to my partner and go, you know what? I'm not judging me and I'm not judging you.
Yes.
And just to actually say that, and then to start the conversation. And I don't know if I started it or Josh started it. We've had this conversation a couple of times, but we just got real comfortable and real vulnerable and open with one another. And one of us took the step to just go, hey, I like this, or I want to try this. And it was interesting because for us, our zone of safety and our trust and our communication started in the bedroom, and it overflowed into the rest of our life. And so when things weren't going well with a move or building one of the houses that we have built in the last couple of years, we were having conversations in a much better way than we probably would have had we not started with building that trust in our intimate relationship. And for some people, it happens in the opposite direction.
Yes.
And we've got another one here that was really good. Sorry, Mona, go ahead.
Well, that is so awesome, because, one of the things that I have to thank my ex-husband for, and this is a very vulnerable thing to say, is introducing me to adult toys. Okay. Now we started dating at 21. So, and he, like I said, I think he was an expert on all this stuff, and he introduced that into our sex life, and I loved it. And I don't think that I would have ever taken the initiative to do that at such a young age, but I would highly recommend to anybody that's watching this to explore. Go online. Now you don't have to go to the adult toy store to buy them. You can go online. You can go to Amazon. Find something that you might want to explore, and explore your body yourself, because that is going to be so helpful. And then you'll know what to share with your partner. The other thing, Carole Jean, is I'm with you that if you can be that vulnerable and feel safe in the bedroom, it definitely can trickle out to other areas. So congratulations to you and Josh for having that foundation.
And there's a comment in the chat that I love, because this really brings up having those alternate ways to communicate when we're talking about things in the beginning that may feel a little uncomfortable. And this brought back something in my own life that I would love to share, because I think it might help everybody in this conversation that we're having. And the commenter says, sometimes writing is easier than speaking. Writing one's fantasies and sharing them with your partner or your spouse can be a really powerful tool. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that was something Josh and I did early on. We found an app, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was. And I will see if I can go find it, and I'll share it in the show notes for this, guys. But it was one of it was like a dare, and you could challenge your partner to do certain types of things. And it was all sort of romance, intimacy, and sexuality.
Awesome.
Some things were like fun, just like walk up unexpectedly and give your partner a back massage or a kiss, on the neck or whatever. Right. But one of the prompts or the challenges was to take turns creating and writing an erotic story.
Love it.
And it was really neat, because one of us would start and you'd write a paragraph, and then the next person, we did it like a shared Google Doc. So we never saw the other person, but we got to like read, and then we got to share ourselves. So it was a little less intimidating than actually like saying face to face. And it was so much fun, because I think we ended up going back and forth and like really taking this story, for a good bit. For a couple of weeks. And it was really neat, because then we kind of opened up conversations, and we started talking about different preferences and what we wanted to try. And we removed a lot of judgment, because we were having fun, and we approached it from a play perspective of, let's just see where this goes. This will be fun, and just taking turns doing that. So I love that suggestion. Thank you for putting that in the chat.
Yes, I think that's so wonderful. Yeah. Fantastic. Any other thoughts that folks are having?
As a curvy woman who is insecure in my self-image, it's easy to worry I will never compare, compete, or measure up to what's in the fantasy world.
And you won't. And that's okay. That's okay. Because I am a full-size woman too. And and
I'm curvy.
And I'm curvy. And I think I've always been. And the fact of the matter is, I really do think that when we're getting sexually intimate and we're turned on, this is what I really believe in. And anybody out there can negate this. I don't think that anybody is really looking at the cellulite and the extra pounds around the waist. They're turned on by you. They're turned on themselves, because they're thinking about what's coming next or what you're doing in the moment. And I know, and this has been for me, and I've had to learn this, our insecurities and our feelings about our own bodies, and that other people are not going to appreciate them and get turned on by them, is what challenges us from not having the satisfying, healthy sex life. Because you know what? If you're with somebody who is negating who you are physically, that's not the right partner for you. You want somebody who's going to want to touch all your curves and every bit of your extra stuff, and is going to get turned on by it, and is going to look at you with love, or they're going to have erotic thoughts and feelings about you. Maybe the fact of the matter is, you have an opportunity to search on some of the apps. There are apps for big, beautiful women. My sister went on one of those before, I think after her divorce. And there are men and women that love curvy, big, beautiful women. Just as there are people that love skinny, people that have no curves. There's somebody for everybody out there. I really believe
That is so true. I do. And, I think this takes us into our next question that we had on our sheet. That's really a good one to explore, in that how can you let your partner know you don't like something without the hurt feelings? Because, it's a tough thing, especially for those of us who have rejection sensitive dysphoria. And the slightest little thing can be very wounding.
Yeah.
We have such sensitivity to not wanting to wound or hurt our partner's feelings. But when we don't like something, how do we navigate this, Mona?
Yeah, I think that that's so important. And I think, first of all, sometimes you might not like something when it's actually happening. And I think one of the more hurtful ways of approaching it, or the most damaging way to approach it, is to judge and get really angry at your partner in the moment. And I'm sure many people have been guilty of that. But one of the things that I've done over and over again is literally take my partner's hand or move their face and put their hand or their face where I would prefer it and say, this feels really good. I really enjoy this. Even better than what you were doing earlier. Do you mind if we are in this position, or if you're doing it this way? And that, I think that was probably really helpful to neurodivergent folks to hear exactly what you want, rather than focusing on what didn't work, and helping by moving them, either verbally saying, this is what I really, really like. Do you mind if we move over here? Or physically moving their body or their hands. What do you think here, Virginia?
That's a good one. And the other part to that too is, for those of us with processing delays that may take a little minute, what I found is that I might recognize in the moment, okay, that's not great, or I'm not loving that, and there's definitely things that are like a hard stop, like, nope,
Sure.
That's not working. But
Yeah.
then there's these subtle things that sometimes upon reflection, sometimes it's like a couple hours, sometimes it's a couple days. But to come back and we'll have a conversation, not in the bedroom,
Right.
but, like maybe on a walk, or to say, hey, I really was thinking about the other day and I liked these particular aspects, but it took me a little bit to formulate that particular thing. I don't think that's my favorite. I would maybe like to try doing this. What did you experience? What did you think? What did you like about this? And maybe what can we adapt to make this more exciting and a good experience for you? And how can we come together on this? And that has been a big one. And I think that kind of leads us into our next one, which is really good. It's like, what is the best way for your partner to share their interests with you? I love that because, Mona, you bring up a lot of different options in this. And I think that's from, do I want to text it to you? Do I want to maybe sit back to back where we're facing opposite directions and then let's just talk, but I don't have to look at you to tell you things, just some of those things. What are your thoughts on this in some ways we can explore sharing and inviting our partner to share with us in a way that sort of suits their communication styles? Because we all have our preferences and needs in this.
Absolutely. I think the ones that you said are fantastic. I think a lot of times it's much easier to do it when you're not in the bedroom. I know that in the past, I've had those conversations driving in a car or taking a walk. And in both of those situations, we were not looking each other in the eyes. And oftentimes we were talking about what we enjoyed the most during previous sexual activity. And, it's going to be a very vulnerable conversation. But again, if you know what you want in a healthy, satisfying sex life, or you're exploring and you don't know, but you want to try new things, if you don't communicate that to your partner, they will not know. They're not mind readers. And, for me, I don't think I ever said no to my ex. And we were together for 32 years because I was open to exploring everything he asked. But I don't think that I'm the norm. And I've been with other partners who wanted to do things that I didn't want to do. and I would say, no, but I would prefer to do this. If you don't have a partner that is willing to listen to your needs and somebody that is open to your no as well as your desires, I would say you need to ask yourself if that's the kind of partner you want to have moving forward. Because sex, if you are sexually active and you're not asexual, I think is one of the most important parts of a healthy relationship. Don't you want to be able to have healthy communication in that area with your partner? That's a question you have to ask yourself.
Oh, yes. And that brings me back to something that one of my mentors shared with me a few years ago, and it really made a huge impact because, I'm a recovering people pleaser, y'all. Just gonna be honest here. I was doing whatever everybody else wanted. I was killing myself in the process.
Sure.
Because I never said, well, what do I need? And he said, Carole Jean, how can anyone trust your yes if they never hear you say no? And that really applies in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Because if you never hear your partner tell you no, that that's not something they like, or no in any other aspect, then how do you really trust that, yes, that does feel good? I mean, sometimes you can get the physical and the audible feedback, but
Right.
sometimes look, we've all seen When Harry Met Sally for the most part. We know you can fake it.
Right.
And to be genuinely open about, well, that does feel good, or no, that's not my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
What I love is you also bring up a discussion around, in our neurotype differences, we also have different preferences and needs when we come to sensory things.
Yeah.
Yes, that can be a big part of the neurodivergent experience, but it's also part of the neuromajority experience. I mean, sensuality in sex and all of our sensory areas in sex, that's part of the human experience. Now, the levels are different.
Sure.
What are some of the things that you've seen really help couples communicate these things when it comes to those sensory differences, Mona?
Yeah. I mean, for some folks, being totally clean, having a shower before and then after sex is really important. If that's important to you, it's important for you to share that with your partner. If you're a man and wearing condoms, whether you need them for birth control or not, is really important because you do not like the mess that comes after an ejaculation, then share that with your partner. And I've been with partners that feel that way. And if you, like I said earlier, if you prefer to have parts of your clothing on while you're having sex, you need to be able to share that with your partner if it's too uncomfortable for you to have all your clothes off. Whatever it is that turns you on or turns you off sensory-wise, get comfortable with it, and then have those conversations through text, through email, through on a walk, in a car, at dinner, whatever, back to back with your partner. And I would say one at a time, one issue at a time, because I am very guilty of, going through 10 things that I want, or, 13 things that need to change. And it's overwhelming. And I think it's overwhelming for no matter what neurotype you are. I think it's overwhelming, but I think it was absolutely overwhelming for the autistic men that I was with. And I now know that it's really important, one issue at a time, and start with something positive. Like, I really love when we light one candle. I love it. But when we have 10 candles in the room, it's a little too much scent for me. Or I love it when we start out with all our clothes on and touch each other fully clothed. And then I love when you turn out the lights and we take off our clothes. By making it really strength-based and talking about what you love, I think it helps your partner feel confident and comfortable in your sex life. And when you don't like things, you can share it, but you start with what you do like and what you'd like changed. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
I love that. Yes, I love that. I think that is just such a beautiful place to come from. And as we're kind of winding this up to get into any Q&A we have here, I really want to talk about your neurodiverse love conversation cards, Mona, because Josh and I are huge fans. We absolutely adore your conversation cards.
Thank you.
So, what are some ones, because I know you picked out a few
Yeah.
to help people feel more connected, understood, and safe, and that can lead to more physical and sensual connection? So, share some of those with us. Let's do these together.
Okay, so I picked out two, and they aren't related to sex, but they're opportunities for couples to get a little bit more intimate with each other. And so the first one is, what are your favorite topics to discuss with me? And I think that that doesn't require you to be super vulnerable. It may be about things that are your special interest. It might be about your children. It might be about, something you're doing at work, but it allows your partner to feel safe sharing what they enjoy and what they like. And then that kind of conversation can lead to a more intimate conversation. So that's the first one. There's that other side of the cards. And then the other one, Carole Jean, was how do you prefer to ask for and receive advice and input from me? And I think that one can be really helpful when it comes to sexual and physical intimacy, because when you know how your partner wants to hear your thoughts, then when you're looking to share with them something about, your sexual preferences or physical preferences or sensory issues, the best way to communicate that to them.
Oh, I love that so much. So, guys, I have my own set here of neurodiverse love cards. And here's the one that I chose for us, Mona.
Okay.
I thought this was a really good one. It kind of goes to either side of the bedroom discussion, but just help connect. If you came with instructions, what would they say?
Love it.
This is one of my favorite ones. Josh and I have had so much fun with that one. And that actually, you can answer these in all different ways, which I love, because you can write them down and text them back and forth. You can create a shared Google Doc where you have these and sort of add to them as you go. You can have one-on-one conversations, or you can sort of bring it all together and do both, write it back and forth and then talk about it later. I'm an auditory processor. God bless Josh's heart some days. You got to listen to it. But, part of that was sometimes I don't need him to respond or do anything. I just need him to listen so that I can hear myself working something out.
Yeah.
So I know when I need that a little bit, or sometimes I kind of catch myself a few minutes in and I'll go, hey, I don't need you to respond or come up with an answer or solve the problem. I just need you to listen. Yeah. And it's so funny because he'll go, okay, that changes how I listen. And I'm like, you don't even really have to pay attention. Honestly, I just need you to just sit there and hold space so that I can verbally process this.
Yes.
And isn't that what happens in sex?
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful though? I love when you talk about your relationship with Josh, because you can say that to him and he doesn't get offended or he doesn't get hurt, because he knows how your brain works and he knows that you're telling him what you need around that conversation or around a discussion around that issue. How beautiful, Carole Jean.
It's such a relief. It honestly is. Yeah. And what's really nice is he has even gotten to this place where he'll go, I know you're processing. He goes, but I'm going to throw out a question just for food for thought. And when he does that, those questions that he asks me usually solve whatever problem I was having. Awesome. They usually make me stop and reframe something, because he sees things from a very different perspective than I do, which, in relationships can be difficult sometimes, but it can also be a really great bonus, because he sees things I don't, and I know that, and I see things he doesn't. So, there's lots of times he'll ask me about something. He'll go, okay, I got this problem happening and I don't know maybe if I'm missing something. This is how I see it. And, the same thing happens when it comes to our sensual and sexual relationship. It's like, this is kind of how I'm experiencing this right now. And this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing and experiencing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And just starting that, and it kind of goes back and forth, and it kind of pierces that membrane bubble between, your bedroom life and your other life. What I want to just kind of check the chat box really quick to see if anybody has any questions that they've popped in here. And guys, feel free to put anything in the chat box that you have. Mona, I know we got a couple things here on the list that we haven't quite touched on yet. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about or share before we move into our last 10 minutes here?
Let's see. I think one of the other things that we talked about was when you enjoy sex. So, one of the partners I had, he didn't want to have sex during the day. And I understood why when I thought about it through a neurodiverse lens, but I was hurt at first when he would turn down my advances. And the reason he didn't want to have sex during the day was because then he'd have to take a shower. And then we'd have to unmake the bed and make the bed and whatever, because he only wanted to have sex in the bed, whatever. So I think it's really important, if you prefer to have sex at a particular time of the day, that you understand why and that you're able to share that with your partner. And that's not going to be an issue for everybody, but if it is an issue for you, that you understand why and can explain it to your partner. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And that's a really good one. And I think it's a question we don't always ask ourselves. It's like, when do I prefer to have sex? What time of day? In what location?
Yes.
What setting do I like to have? And guys, this also applies to your solo sex.
Yes.
Because you got to have some solo sex in there. That's one of the things that can really help as you're starting to navigate this, as you're learning or maybe connecting for the first time, even in your 40s and beyond, folks. It happens. I'm living proof it happens in your late in life sometimes.
Well, I'm 58, Carole Jean, so I beat you on the age spectrum.
There we go. We got a decade between us. So, as you start to experiment and really allow that scientist to come into your life and just go, hey, what's the data on my body? What's the data on my body right now? Because the data on your body right now, folks, is not going to be the data on your body 5 years from now. I'm here to tell you.
Absolutely.
And that kind of can be tough. And another aspect too, for those of us who are also a combined type, I'm also ADHD. I got to have those transition times. Like, you can't just go from like 1 minute to the next thing without some buffer in between. Yeah. Some days I need more buffer than others. Some days I can maybe just have a 2-second buffer window between activities.
Yes.
But, sometimes your partner might need a little transition time, a little bit of a warm up to get to from sitting on the couch, Netflix watching to, having the hot, heavy sex.
Yes.
You just may not be this jump, because sometimes that for our physical body can feel really jarring. So remember the transition time. So checking in with yourself as you're going, checking in with your partner as you're going, to kind of figure out what works for them and what works for you. Because the more you know about you, the better and more effectively you can communicate with your partner. And I think sometimes, you and I have talked about this, Mona, sometimes we've got to set that foundation first with our partner, where we have an agreement. Like, maybe you guys sit down, and before you start talking about any of this heavy stuff or even the fun, light stuff, you sit down and you come up with like your ground rules together of how you're going to communicate. Like for Josh or I, it's, if our feelings are hurt, if we're feeling like we're experiencing something, the other person has maybe said something and it's hurt our feelings, that we share it. We don't hold on to it and run through the story in our head. We have an agreement that if we feel like our feelings are hurt, we communicate it, and we don't take off, and the other person does not take it personally. They don't get offended. They hear them out, and you share what your intention, your meaning, or your delivery was, and you work through it. Because when we were holding on to where our feelings were hurt and we weren't sharing it and we weren't saying, this is what I experienced. Is this what you meant? And not asking those questions and giving the other person the opportunity to really share what their intent was or what they were thinking in the moment.
Yeah.
Man, so much hurt happens and then nothing's happening in the good stuff because you're
Right.
so hurt and upset.
Right. Exactly.
But those ground rules, kind of how you're going to navigate some tough points, because you know they're going to come up, people, they just will.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I keep repeating on the podcast is that John and Julie Gottman, they've been doing research with couples forever, for I think over 40 years. And one of the things that they say is 69% of our problems are perpetual problems. And they don't mean that in a negative way. They mean that they probably won't be resolved because they have something to do with how our brain's wired, our personality, certain characteristics, certain needs we have, whatever. So we get in that communication roundabout where we're arguing or fighting or not feeling valued or validated about things that are probably not going to change. But then the 31% of the issues that are resolvable, when we are judging and we're critical and we start really negatively, I think it's hard for our partners to hear us. And so the term they use is a soft startup. And it's kind of what I've talked about throughout this. By starting with something positive, or starting with something you like, or sharing something that you appreciate, and then going into what your need or want is, or the change that you're looking for, it just can be received so much better. And I know it's really hard to do that when you're feeling hurt and not listened to, or, your soul's been injured in some way because of some comment that was made or rejection. But I think that's a time to step away, even if it's just for a few minutes, rather than reacting. And then instead coming back and being able to respond with like that soft startup that's kind and caring and compassionate.
Oh, Mona, I love that so much. That is such an important thing. And,
Thanks.
I would add to that, because sometimes in those moments of hurt, we have that physical, uncomfortable feeling. And we also carry a little fear and we carry a little hurt with that. And it's very easy for that to sort of unleash the beast once you start the conversation. So one thing that I learned that has been really helpful, and this was from George and Linda Pransky, and they have a wonderful relationship book out there, guys. One of the things that they talk about is starting with a warm feeling. Mm-hmm. And, so sometimes what I've done, because you can get stuck in that feeling, because sometimes it gives you that dopamine hit of feeling good, because it's like my rightness in this is, I'm going to die on my hill.
Yes.
But to really reflect back and shift the way you're feeling in your body to enhance and bring about and enlarge the warm, loving, kind feeling that you have for your partner. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I do that by thinking back to moments and envisioning what it felt like in that moment of something, like when they, when I'm held, when I'm feeling really seen, heard, appreciated, and loved. And I know that that's that person's heart for me. And I take that feeling and then have that conversation, have that soft start. It really, when you shift that emotional feeling state within yourself and then have that wonderful soft start that the Gottmans talk about, I think that just sort of brings it all to this really powerful place.
I agree. And then you can have those tough conversations because your partner feels safe and they know that when they share what they're feeling, you're going to validate it rather than negate it. And I am guilty of the negating and judging and everything. And it's taken, a lot of years. And I'm a social worker, that, Carole Jean. So I've done a lot of work in an academic setting with clients and on my own. And I'll always be a work in progress. Always, 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 always. I think
me too. I am an imperfectly perfectly imperfect person, and I will always be a work in progress. And that's
Amen.
okay, because every day that I am a work in progress, I am evolving into the higher, better version of me. And
Amen.
that's okay to be part of that. Some days are great, some days are a little tougher than others, and that's just part of the human experience.
Yeah.
Guys, I hope that this conversation has really served you today, that this has helped you see some things in your neurodiverse relationship. If you haven't already, or if you haven't yet checked out the Neurodiverse Love podcast, please go check it out. And if you are looking for a phenomenal way to kickstart some of these conversations in your relationship, go get Mona's wonderful Neurodiverse Love connection cards. Josh and I love these. We have devoured them. We have gone through them multiple times. We have so much fun with these because each time they never get old. Each time you read the question, you're in a different place in your relationship and you have a different or new answer. And it just brings you that much closer to sharing. Mona, thank you so much for being here today and for being the wonderful advocate that you are in bringing neurodiverse couples together.
Thank you, Carole Jean. It's been a pleasure, as always.
I'm letting it play out for a second till it finishes on the YouTube side, because there's like a 20-second delay. So we're paused. We're good on this end.